Hey guys, Mark here. Today got a little video about upgrading the tail of the Walkera V200D02. Now this applies to the D02, not the D01. The D02 uses a tail motor and then a shaft and then puts the tail rotor on the back. Not a bad system, but for beginners, on a beginner helicopter, not a good system. So I had mentioned before that there was a mod you could do to make this more beginner friendly, and that is basically adding the direct drive tail motor and tail rotor to the helicopter, which just makes it a little more durable and easier to repair. Now, the reasons I don't like the stock setup is, first off, the tail rotor itself. It's a pretty weak tail rotor, and to take it off once it breaks, you actually have to cut it off with a pair of side cutters. Just very inconvenient. Not very, just not something you really want on a beginner helicopter. Now the other thing is there's little gears back here. So if you crash your helicopter and really, whack the tail pretty good, there's the distinct possibility you're going to break these gears. And again, that's just another pain in the butt to have to fix. And then the other thing is with the tail boom, with it having a shaft-driven tail here, if you bend your tail boom really bad, you may end up having to replace the shaft as well as the tail boom. Now, adding the direct drive tail motor solves these problems, basically. The tail rotor is installed and held on with just one bolt. So if you break it, take that bolt off, put the new tail rotor on, put the bolt back in, that's it. No having to worry about side cutters. There's no gears here at all, so there's no gears to have to worry about breaking. There's no tail shaft to have to worry about bending. It's just motor and tail rotor. Now, the tail fin here, these parts actually all come from the Honeybee CP3, so this is a very cheap upgrade. It's about $12 to do the part. This fin, you can actually get an upgraded fin for the Honeybee CP3. Uses a CNC tail mount and a carbon fiber fin. A little bit better than this fin, but I just chose this fin because it was cheap and it kept the whole mod cheap. It's a pretty durable fin. They also use this fin on the Honeybee fixed pitch version 2. So you could actually look for the parts for this at either of them. And the fin is about the same size as the stock fin, so it doesn't make the helicopter sit like this. It's only maybe 10 millimeters bigger than the stock fin. So now one thing about this mod is it does make the helicopter a little bit more tail heavy because you're putting the motor on the back of the helicopter rather than just back here on the back of the frame. So you may want to add a couple extra weights to the front of the helicopter. For the most part, though, the electronics are actually going to try to compensate for it being tail heavy. But you should still add a little bit of weight, try to get it balanced. So, like I said, I think, if you're a beginner, you should definitely do this mod. It's going to make your life a lot easier, when you crash, because, like I said, changing this stuff is just a little bit more of a pain in the butt than it should be. So adding this, definitely better. These tail motors, actually, too, they're more powerful, and they have a longer life than the other style tail rotors. And like I said, I just really think this is going to help you along. So now I'm going to show you what you need and how to do the mod, and that way if you get one of these, you know what to do. Alright, to do this mod, you're going to need 5 things, as you can see here. I've got the tail fin for the eSky Honeybee fixed pitch version 2 and Honeybee CP3. So you look for the spare parts for that, that's where you can find this fin. And then we've got the tail motor for the eSky Honeybee CP3, as well as the tail rotor and the heat sink for the tail motor, and also the wires for the tail motor, because the stock wires on here aren't nearly long enough to go to the back, because that's what, where we're going to have the motor. So the, getting the wires solves the problem of how do you get power to your motor back here. So, alright, so the first thing I did was I went ahead and removed this tail fin here. You can see there's just 2 screws that hold it onto the tail box. And once you remove the tail fin here, you can see the tail box, and there's 5 screws for the tail box, and then there's one other screw that holds the tail box from rotating on the tail boom. So what you need to do is just go ahead and loosen these 4 screws on the end there. Just give them 1-2 turns, and then go ahead and remove the silver one. And when you do that, what should happen is you should be able to take the whole boom and start sliding it out the back. Now, sometimes there's a bearing on this shaft, and actually you can see See the hole right there? You can see the bearing coming up to that hole. Now sometimes when they drill that hole down in there, you get a little bit of a burr, so that bearing doesn't want to come over that, so you may have to really yank that. But then you got the whole tail box all out, and now we can go on to the next step. So I went ahead and I disconnected the wires for the tail motor, and I kind of snaked them out from behind the main motor. And you should be able to get them out without having to cut anything. That's one of the great things about this little mod. So now here on the back, see this plastic part that comes up over the tail motor? I'm going to go ahead and take that off. It's 4 screws. Now you could probably get away with not having to remove it, but I just feel that you're going to save yourself just a little bit of frustration if you do take it off. So that is why I would recommend just, like I said, it's only 4 screws, and it just kind of comes up and off like that. So now we can see you got better access to the tail motor. Now this is actually held on with a screw on each side of the heat sink here. So on the bottom here you actually got little access holes where you can come up and unscrew. And go one more. Alright, heat sinks off. Go ahead and try to get these screws out of here. Well, yeah, alright. So now anyways, so you can pull the motor up. So I'm just going to get the wires pulled through here. There we go. So that's up and off. Now you can actually go ahead and reinstall this if you want. Okay, with the tail fin, you needed to find a way to secure the tail fin on the tail boom. And you can see here, each guy uses a single screw to secure the tail fin on the tail boom of the honeybees. So what I ended up doing, I just chose to drill a new hole into my tail boom right there. So that way when I slide my tail fin on here, I just go ahead and using one of the screws that held the original tail fin on, just go ahead and screw that down, and then my tail fin is nice and secure on the tail boom. The new motor wires are really long, so there's plenty of ways you can choose to run the wires, whatever is simplest for you. And also here you can see this little twist. All this is, I was just twisting the wire around. And that's way, when I have the wire running through here, I don't have these wires separating apart, and it just looks a little bit better. So when I slide this through, it, like I said, it doesn't really matter how you route your wires. I'm going to try to follow a little bit of the original path because it just seems like a good way to run the wires. So, need to make sure I have room to connect it here. Alright, now I'm just going to go ahead and slide these wires down through the boom, and when they come out the back here, I'm going to be sliding them out of, obviously, this big hole here. There's nothing special about mounting the tail motor, except that the screws to mount the tail motor actually come with the tail rotor. Alright, so the tail rotor, very simple to install. You just see you got a little hex grub screw on each side, and you just go ahead and position that on the shaft there and tighten them down. Now with the heat sink for the tail motor, very simple to install too. You just snap it on the tail motor. Just be careful that you have it positioned in a fat way that it's not going to pinch these tail motor wires. So at this point you can go ahead and cut your motor wires to length and then just get them soldered up on the motor. And don't worry about if you get those soldered on the right terminal, because you can go ahead and always reverse the connection on the receiver. And then you can see the connectors are the same. So hooking this new motor up to the receiver is very simple. Just plug it in. Now, just in case you got those wires soldered on the wrong terminals, all you gotta do, unplug this and then turn it around and then plug it back in. That simple.